Hey everybody, it's Gavin Seim, and today I want to share a really cool lesson with you that I learned last week, or should I say relearned, because I know it, but the most important lessons in our photography, we usually have to kind of go over again and again and again. And this is despite me being a master photographer with going on 30 years of experience. The main thing is that we're always pushing ourselves and trying new things. And the tip I'm going to give you today is simple, but no one's doing it. This photo. This photo was taken, I believe, in North Dakota around 2010. Okay, on this camera, my old 5D Mark II, which is now converted to infrared. At this time that I took this photo, it was not. This is the raw file, right? There's nothing particularly bad about it. It's nice. We have an aspen grove. There's some late afternoon light, but it's not particularly inspiring. And so it's one of those photos that I took and it just kind of got, okay, let's be real. It's boring. It's just a photo of some aspen trees. With new and old photographers, where we'll get emotionally attached to a photo and we'll kind of beat it into the ground, even if maybe it doesn't have it. And that's because we felt something here. The connection of feeling something here and conveying that from the three-dimensional world to the two-dimensional world is two things. And the least understood factor in doing that is tone. Because tone, yes, along with space and position and composition, but tone really helps us direct the eye. I mean, you can go back to the 1600s to Rembrandt, where he's painting these really hectic scenes with a lot of things happening, and using tone, he leads the eye right where he wants it. But here's the thing that we don't talk about much. Sometimes we do the opposite. We took a photo, and then when we see it, we're disappointed, and so we kind of lose that feeling. Maybe we weren't that invested. Maybe we feel that disappointment and we kind of just drop it off. Sometimes for good reason. Some photos just don't work. And we don't need to just fight and fight and fight to try to save a photo that's not that great. But sometimes we also need to rethink and redirect. And in doing so, we might not only get a great photo out of something that we thought we failed at, but we will understand how to see and visualize better for the next time we're in the camera. But let's focus on this image. I was going through old images and doing tests and shadow experiments and things like that because I have knowledge now that I didn't then. So as I'm doing these tests, I'm digging really deep. Silver has been around for like 15 years. It was one of the first preset packs that was commercially available, long before influencers every 6 months coming out with a new pack. And this is something that I've learned over the years. I don't just come out with a new and a new and a new. I continue building on things like, oh, this is my black and white presets. And this video, I don't want to make it about silver. I'll drop a link in the description if you guys want to check it out, and that's cool. But this is a theory video. Now let me show you this photo, and now I'm going to show you the final photo that I edited with it. And the lesson I think here is that sometimes we get attached to an image like we talked about and we fight for it so much, and sometimes it's worth it and sometimes it's not. And sometimes we skim right over an image, and I'll go back and look at images I took a decade ago that may have had some technical flaws or may have not came out how I was visualizing them at the time. And then I'll go back and work on those with new eyes and new experience or new tools, and everything changes. So the first thing you see is the crop. My crop didn't utilize well my negative space. We have this little fence down here. There's kind of these ribbons of light along here. And if you look at my final version, it's tighter. Let's actually reset it, but leave the crop. So here's the color version, but with the crop. Now you can see you're not lost over here on the left hand, right? We've taken a little bit of that sparse sky out, and we have done some darkening down here on the bottom. You can see that I've done a pretty intense gradient mask right here just to darken this. Okay, now as a color image, it's not bad, but I didn't actually want a color image here. Now what I used on this is the Aspens preset from Silver 6. Now you could use whatever recipe you want, but I want you to analyze what we just did with this recipe. And this is why I'm always saying you need to use presets even if you make your own. So if you edited this kind of normal, let's say, you might end up with something like this. And again, you'd be like, oh, that's kind of disappointing. And the sky kind of draws all your attention. But the big thing I did here is I changed my perspective on the tone. I went in and I really pushed down the blues of the sky. And you can see just how aggressive I got in here in this particular preset that I use, because the goal of this preset, as I was going through and refining these presets for Silver 6, was really to emphasize shadow and create contrast between, right? In this case, between the yellows and the oranges and the aspens and the blues and the greens and things like that. I should add a quick note here, and that's when you're doing these more extreme edits, these are advanced processes. That is to say, if you go into Lightroom or Capture One or Camera Raw and you just rip the blue slider all the way down, yes, you're going to get really dark skies, but it's not going to be like that red filter in the film days, because you have to balance out between where the trees meet the sky and where the blue touches green, touches orange. If you're not careful, you tend to get artifacting. So it may look fine on a phone screen, but when you go to do a print for a gallery or the wall, it's not going to be the same. So take the time on these recipes to understand what's happening with your tone, whether it's color or black and white. This rings true. And sometimes you have to tweak it around. For example, to pull down the blues in this formula, I also had to adjust things like the purples and the greens so that where edges met, it worked. And we had this kind of consistent flow from one tone to the other. So I'm using sort of an F curve in here, and I'm using a little bit of highlight and shadow and dynamic range, but the most important thing I'm doing is really happening here in being completely unintimidated by the shadows in how I process this. And the other really important thing that actually made a lot of difference was just this little mask here, because that little ribbon of light down there was pulling my eye. And now we look at this and it's really dark. The process here and the way that it emphasizes shadows is what to me brought this image back. Now, you may not love this image, or maybe you do, but now it speaks the way I wanted it to. Now that atmosphere of the slightly blowing aspen trees, of the highlights of the sun hitting them, of the shadow surrounding them, is created by the tonality and the way it directs the eye. This felt plain and boring to me. This is what took me 15 years to figure out. And photographers avoid things like this because photographers are scared of shadow. They're afraid of the dark. And this is something I talk about a lot in my Shadow Hackers workshops as well. I'll put a link to my next free Shadow Hackers workshops in the description. This makes me want to ask more questions about the photo, not just walk away from it. There's a lot of hidden details, and yet if I click the clipping indicator, you notice that we're not clipping black and white. In fact, let's take this to Photoshop for a second. I'm not going to edit this in Photoshop. This was edited in Lightroom, although I might do some details in Photoshop. But let's run Lumist, where we can edit and control zones, the Lumist actions, and just look at the zone map. If you look at this zone map, you can see that it goes all the way down to zone 0, but not truly clipped, right? That last edge goes into the black is truly clipped. So it's zone 0. And if you look in the trees here, you can see it not going to clipped white, but all the way up to the orange color code, which is zone 9. Okay. So that's our live zone map for this. This is using the entire tonal range from 0 to 10. All 11 stops. Now, don't confuse this with dynamic range in terms of what your camera sensor we're using. We're using this in terms of the zone system from pure black to pure white. We're using the entire range, but still not clipping. Okay, so let's just look at this and recap. Here was our raw file. Here's our cropped, trimmed, edited, tone-controlled file. And you notice how I didn't try and cut out this negative space. You kind of wonder, like, what am I seeing there? What's over there? It adds more questions to the photo, which gives it more strength. Negative space is very powerful. And this goes to composition and space and lines and things like I talk about more extensively on this channel and in my master classes. But I really wanted to emphasize the tone with this, because I did this with various photos with these new black and white formulas that I've been working on, by being completely unintimidated by shadow and pushing the limits. But you have to understand that this took me 15 years to find this. And so I think this also emphasizes how important it is that we just try things, right? That you use presets or actions, and they don't have to be mine. You might be making your own, but it allows you to find these little secret niches and creative aspects of your photography. And then you'll come back to those later and try them on something else. And what will happen is you'll discover things that didn't work before and now do. And you would think that with the limited amount of sliders and tools and curves that we have in our editing software, that it would be easy, right? But it's not. because sometimes it truly does take me more than a decade to find the right edit for a photo. Before, it was just trees. Now it's like we have a grove of aspens at a ball, and they're dancing together. The more I'm not afraid of shadows and tone, the more I'm willing to push those limits, and the more I then convert that into tools that can be used on an everyday basis, the more I understand and see in the camera and then carry that through to the complete image. You tell me in the comments what you think. Maybe you don't like this image, maybe you do. I love this photo, and I didn't before. And I think that's a really important lesson. Not only that, it's okay to go back sometimes to the old stuff and see where you came from and what you can pull out of it, but understanding that things aren't as absolute as you think helps you make better photos tomorrow. And I think that's pretty cool. Let me know what you think. We'll see you guys next time. And I'll be doing another more hands-on video on how I do black and white and using silver soon. I just wanted to do a little isolated video in particular on this photo of aspen growth. All right, you guys, peace.